Howdy everyone! Welcome back to another session of Cooking with Lillian Generoso. Tonight I'm going to be making Banh Cuon, which is like a very generalized kind of name for essentially rice rolls that are filled with some sort of meat, or also sometimes scallion. So essentially there are all these different types of Banh Cuon, and the most important part about it is really the wrapper. Today we're going to fill it with pork, but you can fill it with all kinds of things. For example, if you ever saw the spring roll recipe, you could fill it with the meat used in spring rolls. You could fill it with completely nothing. You could also fill it with just fried onions. There are all kinds of things. I grew up sometimes also eating it with fried crab actually, and sometimes also fried dried shrimp. And so it's really like a huge array of different types of dishes, but the most core and essential part we're definitely going to cover here, and you're welcome to use the same filling that I'm going to use today, or you can use your own. So this dish is a little complex, so don't be afraid of the ingredients. It's all going to get a little separated, and we'll figure it all out along the way. But let's go over to the ingredients table. Alright, so we have a lot of scallions, so this is going to be part of the filling with the pork. We have about a little inch cut of a segment of ginger. We have cloves of garlic. I've reserved 7 cloves for the actual filling, and then 2 cloves for the fish sauce, which is going to be used to top the Banh Cuon. Then we have a giant mixing bowl. We have some measuring cups. That's what we're going to use to measure the actual dough. Now we have some olive oil, which is going to be really essential to all of this, because the dough needs to be very carefully cooked, and it also has to be very well oiled as you're cooking it and also rolling it. And then outside of that we have soy sauce, our friend fish sauce, we have oyster sauce, we have tapioca starch and rice flour. Tapioca starch and rice flour are the 2 key ingredients to the actual dough component of all of this. Then we have some ground pork. This is about 1 pound of ground pork. This is relatively lean pork. It doesn't really matter. It's all dependent on how much fat you want and how much actual meat you want. Remember, generally more fatty ground pork means that it's tastier. So that's up to you. We have sugar, we have black pepper, we have fried red onion, which is going to be used for our topping. We have salt, we have some limes, and those are going to be used for our fish sauce. So first we're going to get all of this chopped up, and then I'm going to show you first how to actually make the filling for all of this before we actually work on the rice paper roll-up part. We'll see you soon. So we have finished with all of the prep, and let's just take a quick look at everything before we start putting it together. We're going to first make the filling. So for the filling we have all of the minced ginger. We have the minced around like 8 cloves of garlic. We have cut up very finely all of the scallions, and now we have moved the pork a little bit closer to the pan. And in terms of additional work that Gina's done, there's the garlic has already been minced. These are the 3 cloves that you saw earlier, and the limes have been squeezed, and those have been put to the far right of this table because we're going to actually use that for the fish sauce for the topping, which we'll get to a little bit later. So in order to make the filling, we have our big pan heating. We're going to cover it very liberally with some oil at the bottom. We're going to fry up the ginger and the garlic. And about half of the onion. All of it is actually going to get in there. I just want to fry in half for at least flavor now, and then the rest will be for color towards the end. Let it fry up. And with this filling, you can also add other elements to it as well. You know, some versions actually use woodier mushrooms, which are kind of like closer to like the black fungus that you'll sometimes get in stir fries. I chose not to get that today because it's a little bit of a hard ingredient to find. So in order to make this a little brighter, I ended up going with more green onion instead. So now we're going to put the pork in. And you want to break up this pork. I'm just breaking it up with the chopstick.
What's the flame like right now, Lovey?
It's on a high.
Okay.
You don't want this filling to be super oily, so that's why it's currently on high, because we don't actually want this filling to be oily or watery. We kind of just want it to be a little bit of a drier fry in general. At this point, I'm going to add soy sauce, about a tablespoon, and about a tablespoon of oyster sauce as well. And we'll keep on frying this up until all of the pork is cooked. This filling needs to be completely cooked. It shouldn't be raw at all whenever you put them actually into the rice rolls, because everything, once all the filling is put into the rice rolls, that should be completely ready to eat. Alright, and at this point, I'm going to add some black pepper as well. I'll add about a tablespoon. And the pork is now falling apart and it's almost entirely cooked through. It cooks up pretty quickly. And you'll see kind of this residual liquid. We want to cook it down and try to make sure that, again, that this filling is a little drier. Don't worry if you do end up having some of the liquid. You can just scoop out the filling with a slotted spoon and there's no worries there. And then I'm going to now add the rest of the green onions, scallions. I'll just incorporate all of that. And this filling now looks done. I'm going to turn the heat down to low just to keep it warm. And then we are going to get ready to prepare the fish sauce, which is super easy, and also the dough as well. So I'll see you back in a couple seconds. We're going to make now the fish sauce, which is really easy, and this is kind of also just a sauce that you can use for other things. It's really, really important in Banh Cuon to top everything, but it's a common sauce that every Vietnamese household has, and they each have a version of their own. So our version has lime juice. This is freshly squeezed, and the way that this works is super easy. It's going to be equal amounts of lime juice, equal amount of water, and equal amount of fish sauce, and equal amounts of sugar. So this is not something that requires rigorous measuring, and it's super easy, and it's kind of one of those recipes that, don't worry, you don't have to be too specific with it. So we have that amount of lime juice. That's probably about 4 spoonfuls.
4 tablespoons at least.
Yeah.
I squeezed 4 limes into that.
So what I'm going to do is I have this big soup spoon, which is about a tablespoon, and I'm going to pour the same amount of fish sauce. Don't worry, it's going to be really strong at first. It'll get better, I promise. 1 and 2. And 3.
Fish sauce.
4. Yes. And at this point, I'm going to put in the same amount of water. So 1 and 2, 3, and 4. And then same amount of sugar. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. And now just mix it all up. You're going to make sure that all the sugar is dissolved. And this is, again, one of those things that you can adjust it to your taste. Every restaurant will always do their own version. For the most part, restaurants will actually kind of decrease the amount of lime and also fish sauce. So if any of this feels too strong for your palate, you can always either add lime juice or you can add a little bit more water. I completely understand that the flavors are a little strong. And now the sugar has been dissolved, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add these nicely and freshly minced garlic cloves, just to add an additional amount of flavor. And that is the fish sauce for the topping. And we will now clear some stuff off, and then we're going to get ready to make the actual dough for the banh cuon. Now we're going to make the flour for our banh cuon. So we've already measured out our water. This is 4 and a little bit over cups of water.
Maybe like a tablespoon more.
Yeah, about a tablespoon more. And now we are going to measure out 1.25 cups of rice flour and 1.25 cups of tapioca starch. So 1 cup, and then a 1/4 cup, gonna pat this down just to make sure that it's tightly packed. So that's 1 cup of tapioca starch. Tap it down. And then a 1/4 cup. Right? It's going to be a tiny bit messy, that's okay. Now, we're going to add 1 tablespoon of oil. We're going to use, in this case, Just saute oil or vegetable oil, any oil is really fine. One tablespoon. And then we're going to put in a half a teaspoon of salt. Alrighty, and so those are all of our dry ingredients, and they're all in there. And now we're going to add the water. Now I'll take our whisk, mix this all up. You want to make sure that there are no lumps in this batter. I'm going to scrape the edges to make sure that no lumps stick to the edges as well. Keep mixing until all of the lumps are dissolved and you don't feel any resistance against the bottom of the bowl. You want to make sure that there's no sediment down there. Alright, and then now, in order to let the dough come together for a little bit, we're going to actually let this rest for an hour. And then we'll come back and we will make our rolls at the... Alright, hi everybody! So we have let the batter sit for an hour and we are ready to make our banh cuon. So right before you actually begin to cook, the flour is going to fall to the bottom, so make sure you give this a nice stir before you do every single banh cuon, just to make sure that the dough is consistent. So what I'm going to do is this pan has been heating, the flame is on medium-high. I'm going to take one full ladle and give it a roll. And then I'm going to put the lid on it and give it precisely 1 minute to cook.
And one thing I think you've said before, when you make these what do you call them exactly?
Banh cuon.
Banh cuon. You're not frying them, remember, you're steaming them. So there's an infinitesimal amount of oil in the pan, but after the first one, you don't really need oil, do you?
No. As you go on, maybe like by the time you get to the fourth or the fifth roll, you should probably add a tiny bit more oil, but when you add the oil, put like maybe a teaspoon in, and then you can easily use a brush or a paper towel to spread the oil everywhere. You don't want there to be concentrations of oil, otherwise the dough will actually fry.
And you don't want that.
Yep, and so we've actually, in the meantime, we've set up a rolling station. So there's the meat, there's the serving plate where we'll finally put our final rolls, and this is a plate in which we're going to actually turn over our banh cuon wrapper. Alright, so it's been precisely 1 minute. Give it a couple extra seconds for good measure. And we're going to take this off. And we're going to flip this straight onto this plate. Again, what is really important in this process is making sure that you have a non-stick pan. So now we have our wrapper. We're going to put some filling on this. And then we're just going to roll it on up. So one, and then we roll that in, we roll this in, then we roll this straight up, and we move it onto our serving plate. And sometimes you're going to get this kind of extra on the bottom, that's fine. Just peel it off and just keep on going with your next crepe. And so we're going to continue to make some more and we'll show you the final product. But again, this can be a really trying process. Don't worry, some of them are not going to look great. You see even on our serving plate, I have one that doesn't look so hot and one that's a lot cleaner. Don't worry about this. At the end of the day, remember, it's supposed to taste good and sometimes it'll be a little frustrating, but I'm sure you'll be able to get the hang of it. We have finished making all of the rolls. And so we've placed them all nicely onto a plate. because if, as you notice, we ended up having a little bit extra filling, which is never a problem, so I used it to make the plate just a little bit prettier by making a center for the flower. And that's it. Remember, you serve it with the fish sauce, this nuc mam. And again, the way that I generally serve it is like with this in a bowl so that whoever is eating it can control as much nuc mam as they want, because it is a very strong flavor. You'll also hear this called nuc mam jam, which is essentially the same thing. One just adds a different word in that it's like the actual fish sauce to dip stuff in. But this was banh cuon, specifically with a pork and scallion filling. I hope you guys enjoy it. Good luck. Let me know how it goes and enjoy.